Now, there's a lot of other studies showing the same thing, and they're looking at adaptations, sprint interval versus traditional endurance training. Again, this seems to be the gold standard. It's called the Wingate protocol, where they do 30 seconds all out versus this endurance training stuff. This was 3 days a week, by the way, right? 30 seconds of all-out training, 3 days a week with 4.5-minute recovery times. The total workout here is about 15 minutes. And you're only working out really for about 2 minutes. The other 13 minutes is actually resting, versus 40 to 60 minutes of continuous cycling at a 65% heart rate for 5 days a week. So, I mean, you're comparing a huge difference here. 1.5 hours a week versus 4.5 hours a week. And the volume of exercise, they're talking about kilojoules. This is how much energy was expended, 225 kilojoules versus 2,250. So, again, about 1/10. Another article looking at training intensity on insulin sensitivity. How much insulin were these people making? Were they prone to diabetes? Were they able to have chance of losing weight? And they compared an hour session 5 times a week versus 3-minute bouts of cycling. We conclude that improvements in insulin sensitivity are more pronounced with high-intensity training when exercise frequency and duration are kept similar. There's all these things on insulin sensitivity. The same things are the same. Our findings suggest that longer-term, higher-intensity exercise training provides more enduring benefits to insulin action compared with moderate or low-intensity exercise. More things for diabetes. An evolving body of research shows that interval training produces greater changes in exercise capacity than traditional aerobic training. Anybody ever do spin training, spin classes? You've seen those crazy people, and they're cycling as fast as they can, right? Spinning became very, very popular years ago. It's still quite popular. You know why? Because it works. These people are losing weight. They're doing high-intensity bursts of exercise. That's how to lose weight. More on interval training. Recent reports demonstrate that interval training is more effective than traditional aerobic exercise training in patients up to approximately 75 years of age. And a lot of it has to do with specific metabolic pathways associated with glycolysis, aerobic metabolism, beta oxidation, and mitochondrial biogenesis. This is all biochemical stuff, but it's saying it's different. You actually burn energy differently when you do a sprint versus when you do endurance training. It's a totally different way of burning energy. More on insulin action. This novel, time-efficient training paradigm can be used as a strategy to reduce metabolic risk factors in young and middle-aged sedentary populations who otherwise would not adhere to time-consuming traditional aerobic exercise regimens. Only 250 kilocalories of work each week. That's very little amount of exercise. That's like 15 minutes of exercise a week. They're talking about how this is after coronary artery disease, how high-intensity aerobic exercise is superior to moderate-intensity exercise. Treadmill at this peak versus less intensity. All these articles, and there's so many more that I haven't put on here. People after bypass surgery, comparing them. Our purpose was to examine the effects of sprint interval training on muscle glycolytic and oxidative enzyme activity and exercise performance. And again, this 30-second maximum stuff here. 3 days a week. There's all different populations they've studied. They studied people that were already in shape, people that were sedentary, people that had heart attacks, people that had coronary artery bypass, all different levels, young people, old people. Yeah, it's all saying the same thing. Now, this is very important right here. It was concluded that relatively brief but intense sprint training can result in an increase in both glycolytic and oxidative enzyme activity. What does that mean? Oxidative and glycolytic. When you do a endurance type exercise. Let's say you go on the treadmill, and you go on the treadmill for 30 minutes. Your body's actually burning glycogen. You're burning the stored sugar, the stored carbohydrates in your muscles. If you stop training at 30 minutes, you have not burned any fat whatsoever. Zero, none, nada. What you have done is you have completely burned up all the glycogen in your muscles. when you're done with that exercise, you will be extraordinarily hungry because now your muscles are going, oh my God, there's no glycogen in here. I want some carbs, and I want them right now. Now, if you continue exercising past 30 minutes, and it's different for everybody, it depends on how much glycogen is stored in your muscles, you will at that point start burning fat. So in the 31st minute, 32nd, of course, at that point, you're also spending a lot of time, and you may be causing oxidative stress. Now, wouldn't it be nice if there was a type of exercise that will burn fat from the first minute that you exercise? Well, guess what? There is, and it's called sprint interval training. It actually it oxidizes things as opposed to glycolytic. This is burning sugar here, okay? You don't want to be burning sugar. You want to burn fat when you work out. And there's a bunch of data showing the same thing. There's different things with sprint interval training. And again, replace that with being on a bike or doing some other type of interval training. High-intensity training has a totally different mechanism. You've heard of fast twitch fibers and slow twitch fibers, right? It's a totally different mechanism than the endurance-type training. Glycogen degradation during sprint exercise was unaffected by sprint training. You don't burn any glycogen with sprint training, which is good. These data demonstrate that sprint training may have enhanced muscle oxidative but not glycolytic capacity. You don't want to be burning your glycogen. Just going to make you hungry. How many times have you gotten off that treadmill or that exercise bike and go, man, I'm really hungry? And then you end up eating what you just worked out. Okay, if you do sprint interval training, has anybody ever tried this? Yes? Believe me, you're not hungry when you're done with that. Okay, and the other thing is it'll actually boost your metabolic rate. It's more, you are burning more fat than glycogen. You're probably burning some. It's a combination. I'm oversimplifying things. That's a good point. But that's what this study showed, that it was actually unaffected by this. I'm sure there must be some effect. But when you do the endurance exercise, it's all glycogen, pretty much. There's some fat, but it's skewed way towards the glycogen with endurance training. What do you call high intensity? How long is the workout for?
45 minutes to an hour.
Okay, well that's moderate or low. It's low intensity then. The terms anaerobic and aerobic, they're sort of not really accurate. An aerobic exercise is considered to be something where you can just keep going at a certain pace. Okay? But even with so-called anaerobic exercise like a sprint, you're still using oxygen, you're still breathing. But yeah, the terms that are used, we say that yes, weightlifting or sprinting is anaerobic, and that endurance training would be aerobic. Anybody else? Okay. So here, diabetics, the same thing. Sprint talks about glycogen again. So there's advantages to sprint interval training. It's much less time. I mean, we're talking way, way less. We're talking 15 minutes total workout, including rest periods. And it's very intense. And you have to, you're not going to sit there and read a magazine when you're doing this. I've had a lot of people refer, Doc, I just started this killer exercise routine. You ever heard people talk about the killer exercise routine? Well, they're not kidding. It is killer. They're killing themselves doing these things. But I just want to summarize the advantage. Much less time, way less volume, 1/10 the volume of actual exercise. You can reduce your chance of overtraining, and you will burn fat from the beginning of the exercise. This is a win, 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 win. So let's talk about weight training. How you want to reduce how much you're doing there, because that's also quite damaging. So, and I'll show you the studies. A lot of studies show that if you do a single set of weights as opposed to multiple sets and reduce the frequency of your workouts, you will get the same benefits.